That way, if you do need to step away, we will be emailing this out to everyone after the session. Welcome, my name is Jessica Lawson. I work in the Community Relations Department here at Peace River Center. Morgan is our speaker for today, and I have Carly on screen real quick because she's going to be moderating our questions. So first of all, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about Peace River Center. We are your community behavioral health center. We provide an array of mental health services from outpatient, which is currently being offered through telehealth, to integrated health care at our wellness clinic. We have two 24-hour inpatient crisis stabilization units, one in Bartow and one in Lakeland. We offer a mobile crisis response team, which Morgan will cover a little bit later, but that's a great resource to be aware of and to also share with friends and families and neighbors. We have substance use disorder programs, 2 domestic violence shelters, as well as a sexual assault recovery program. We operate a short-term residential center, 2 group homes, and offer a wide variety of other mental health resources, or recovery programs, excuse me. So one of the things I wanted to mention, just because I have to give a plug, so September is National Recovery Month, and Peace River Center is doing a virtual marathon. So if anyone is interested in participating, I encourage you to check that out. I'll put the link in the chat box, but it's going to be fun. We're going to track 26.2 miles throughout the month. I did my first mile this morning, so definitely check that out. Just so you know, Peace River Center serves over 22,000 individuals every single year. And no matter what level of care someone needs, we are there for them. We provide their mental health needs. We are so glad you're with us today. Again, for anyone who's just joining us, the session is being recorded and will be shared on our social media channels. Everyone will remain muted and the video's off. Carly and I will be taking ourselves off of video and mute as well so that Morgan can get started. Carly will be moderating the questions. We encourage you to use the Q&A, or if you need to, raise your hand if you need something expanded upon. Before we get started, I would like to introduce you to Morgan. So Morgan Whitaker-Smith is a licensed mental health counselor who currently works as program manager for the Family Intensive Treatment, FIT, team at Peace River Center. Prior to her current role, Morgan served in outpatient therapy settings in the Midwest, and then with the Florida Assertive Community Treatment Team and the Community Action Treatment Team. Her various work settings have provided her with the opportunity to work with a variety of populations over the years to help individuals develop positive ways of coping with anxiety. She specializes in treatment of trauma and stress. In her spare time, Morgan volunteers teaching workshops on ethics and boundaries and serves as a survivor advocate for individuals who have experienced trauma. We are so excited to have you all here today, as well as Morgan. So I'm going to go ahead and put myself on mute and stop my video. And Carly, I'll invite you to do the same, and we will turn it over to our speaker.
Thank you so much, Jessica, and I welcome all of you, and I'm so glad that you are with us today. So as Jessica said, I am a mental health counselor, a licensed mental health counselor, and I have taught lots of presentations on anxiety. And as many of you are probably aware, there's been a huge increase of individuals reporting anxiety and reporting higher intensity of anxiety in the last several months with everything that's happened. And so hopefully, our hope today is that you will be able to learn a little bit about anxiety today, but also, and more importantly, take away some specific skills and things that you can do to cope with anxiety, to lower your overall response to anxiety, but also to learn how to manage it when it arises, and depending on what setting you're in, to be able to teach possibly anxiety skills to others if you're in a setting where you interact with others that way. We're just going to so what we're going to cover today, we're going to start by going through a little bit of what anxiety actually is and why we experience it, because I think understanding that helps us to really know a little bit better how to cope with it if we understand the role it's playing in our brains. And then after we go through that, we're going to talk about some of the ways that we can expand our overall capacity for managing anxiety, basically raising our ability to be resilient in the face of anxiety producing situations. And then we're going to go through some of the skills we can use in moments of intense anxiety that are kind of the crisis management skills when we're feeling very anxious in a moment. And then we're going to, at the end of the presentation, I'm going to kind of go over some what I call advanced anxiety management techniques, which are things that probably many of them may not be things that we typically think of as anxiety management, but they can be very effective. And I think are particularly helpful for times like this when we have a lot that is taxing our ability to manage our stress right now. And at the very end, we're also going to cover just very briefly a little bit about when anxiety gets so intense that it might be time to seek help, and what would be the signs that that a person might be experiencing a moment where it's time to seek out additional support. So that's kind of an overview of where we're headed today. Oh, doesn't want to advance. Come on. There we go. Okay, so just a few statistics. 1 in 3 people in America report dealing with symptoms of anxiety. So it's a very, very common thing. And 40 million adults in the US are at some point affected by anxiety. It's one of the most common things that people can experience as a mental health challenge of some sort. Particularly right now, if you look at that statistic in the lower left side, 42% of people ages 18 to 29 report the pandemic has increased their anxiety or caused it more. And unfortunately, we're seeing that really across the board. So children, adolescents, senior adults, really everyone is reporting that there's an increase of anxiety going on right now. Unfortunately, though, only a little more than 1/3 of people who actually have anxiety disorders get treatment, which is really kind of unfortunate because it's one of the things that we know the most about, and we know very effectively how to treat it. So when I see that statistic, I think about there's a lot of folks that are living with a lot of symptoms that could be managed better and losing out on some quality of life just because it could be, they could learn skills and be able to manage it better. Incidentally, I count myself among these statistics. So just so you know, I am a person who lives with anxiety and experiences it on a daily basis. And so many of the things that I'm going to be sharing as coping skills are practices that I practice in my own life to manage my own anxiety levels. So if you're a person that counts yourself among these statistics, or you know or love someone that is, just know that it's very, very common, and it's very treatable. So I want to start by talking about what is anxiety, what actual function does it serve in our life. So this picture right here on the right is a photo that was sent to me by my mother on the day that I was preparing this presentation. And she came out of the side door of her garage shed kind of thing, and there was a giant snake climbing up the wall of the shed. So let's talk about what anxiety is in our brains. Anxiety is a gift to us that was given to us by our brains as they were evolving. Now, I know it does not feel like a gift when we are in the middle of it, but it actually is a gift. And it's a gift that was created in our brains to keep us safe from threats. So let's think about what would have happened in my mom when she identified that there was a snake crawling up the garage. If we could have peeked inside my mom at that point, we would have seen her heart rate escalate, her breathing get shallow. I wasn't there, but I'm almost certain that there was probably some screaming involved, and her body would have involuntarily jumped back. So we share this in common with almost all animals. Our body's natural state is to have a high level of heart rate and breathing. And we have evolved a brake called the vagus nerve that kind of keeps that moderated. But our body has the ability, when we perceive a threat, to take the brakes off. And then all of a sudden it jumps. And we jump back and we get away from the threat. So we can think about this as the stay alive and figure out the details later response. So we don't want our brains in that moment going, I wonder if I have an antidote for a snake bite. If I get bitten by a snake, am I going to die from it? Those are not helpful thoughts in that moment. We want our body to be able to perceive the threat and get away. So we share that with most animals. But we are not just most animals. We are also mammals. So we mammals, we share this in common with other mammals, we developed social groups. So we live primarily in social groups, and we developed the ability to be very dependent on those social groups for many of our needs to be met. So when that social groups get threatened, we feel threatened by the loss of status, by rejection of others, by abandonment, and anxiety gifted that to us as ability for us to recognize when we need to repair relationships so that we stay in the group. You'll see that with children. They get very fearful of abandonment by their primary caregivers because their needs are met. It's a survival instinct. So we have this, that's the don't be left out response. And that shows up in things like worrying about what happens when there's disruptions in our relationships or something like that. Then we are not just mammals, we are also humans. And because we are humans, we are capable of self-reflection. So this sets us apart from other animals and other mammals. We have evolved the ability to tell ourselves a story about ourselves. And sometimes that story is helpful and sometimes it's not helpful, but it's where our self-doubt comes from, our insecurity, our feelings of inadequacy. And why might that be helpful? Well, if we're thinking about it and we're worried that we might not have done a good enough job on some report we had due for school, we might be motivated to go work on the report more and make it better. If we're worried about how we're managing some relationship, we might be motivated to go apologize and say something. So we have developed the ability to tell ourselves a story about what's going on so that we can do better. That's what anxiety is trying to do for us. We might think of this as the imposter syndrome response. So we feel like everybody else around us has everything figured out and we're the only ones that are imposters. We're the only person that doesn't know what's going on or can't figure it out or can't, manage whatever's happening. So what's the common thread with all of that evolution that our brain did about anxiety? The brain is perceiving a threat to us somewhere in the environment, whether that's a snake or a nasty email or something where we don't feel adequate. The brain is perceiving a threat and it's causing a response inside of us that's trying to motivate us to stay safe or to get our needs met in some way. So anxiety is actually a gift to us from our brains to help us stay safe and get our needs met. I know that it does not feel like it in that moment, but that's what the anxiety is trying to do. And knowing that is very critical because it helps us manage how we respond to the anxiety as we go forward. So when anxiety serves its purpose as it's supposed to, what happens is our brains perceive the threat, whatever the threat is, and we hear a rustle in the bushes. It might be a snake or it might not, but we don't know. We get away and then we figure it out. Or we whatever it is that the threat is. We see the threat, we identify the threat, we complete the stress response cycle, which we're going to talk about in just a minute, and then we return to baseline functioning. So essentially the anxiety floods us with stress hormones, and then the stress hormones get released once the situation is safe again. When anxiety is not so much helpful in our life, though, it's when chronic anxiety is building up. The body is experiencing these stress levels rising and rising and rising without a way to discharge them. And so what happens is over the course of the day or a week or a month, the stress levels in our body start out and then they rise, but they plateau. They rise and then they plateau. They rise and then they plateau. So instead of discharging us back down to baseline, they're building up and building up. And that is where that chronic anxiety comes from that really affects many of us and is so much worse right now. This is what we're going for. This is the ideal stress response cycle, right? So at the beginning of the stress response cycle, we start out at baseline, meaning we are calm, we're functioning. Then our brains perceive a threat somewhere. Snake, nasty email, somebody says something rude to us, something internally makes us feel like we might get fired or something happens like that. The threat is identified. Our body floods with stress hormones to enable us to keep ourselves safe. That's the stress response right here. And then something happens that resolves the stressor. The stressor goes away. So if we're out in the wild, one of two things is going to happen, right? You're either going to get bitten by the snake, and then you're going to have to deal with a snake bite, or you're going to get away from the snake. Either way, somehow the situation is going to end itself, right? And then there's this very important thing that happens where the body discharges that increased level of stress hormones that has risen in our body. That returns us back down to baseline. So now we're ready to deal with this again. So if we were seeing this in a small mammal, like a squirrel or something that's out in the yard, and a predator comes after it, it's going to run, and then it's going to have this stress response, heart rate, breathing, all of that stuff. And then hopefully the predator goes away and it gets away. And then what you're going to see that squirrel do is go find somewhere like a bush or a tree or somewhere safe, and it's going to sit very still and it's going to shake. And if we were looking at it, we might think, oh, poor thing, it's shaking with fear. No, it's not shaking with fear. The threat is gone at that point. It's discharging the stress hormones so that its body is able to be back down at baseline. So it can go about its daily life and be ready for the next thing. Here's what happens for most humans who deal with anxiety. The resolution and the discharge never happen. So maybe we start the day out at baseline, and then we identify the threat. And maybe it's a small threat. Maybe it's just something, a deadline that's coming due, or an email from a teacher about a child's homework or something like that. We have a stress response. Those stress hormones increase in our body, but we never actually resolve a lot of the issues. They just kind of remain there. Even if we get past whatever the thing is that needs to be done, we're not actually completing that stress cycle to discharge the stress response. It just remains in our body. So we get the difficult phone call, but we just stay at our desk and it continues to escalate and escalate. So rather than completing the cycle over here, what's actually happening is the threat is identified, the body has a stress response, floods with stress hormones, and then they remain in the body. And because we have escalated stress hormones, we're more likely to perceive other things as threats, because at that point, the anxiety is serving its purpose. It's scanning the environment to see if we're in a threatening environment. So the threat rises, and then the stress response rises, and it just keeps rising and rising and rising. And then we experience that chronic level of anxiety that we feel, that, constant low grade anxious energy that's going on in our bodies. So why is right now so bad? What is it about anxiety, about the current situation that's making our anxiety so bad? Well, let's think about what's happening in our environment right now, right? We are surrounded by things that we don't know what the outcome will be. So none of us know how the pandemic is going to play out. We don't know what's going to happen with the economy. We don't know what's happening with social things that are going on in the world, with the climate on a personal level. Maybe our employment or our housing has been affected. There are all these unknowns. And remember, the anxiety is a gift to us, helping us identify unknown potential threats. So right now, our brains have perceived the world is extremely unknown right now. And all of that means that baseline anxiety is going up and up and up because the body keeps perceiving more and more threats. In addition to that, change is happening all around us all the time, very rapidly and with little warning, especially over the last 6 months. So when that happens, the brain likes to have a blueprint for how to manage the anxiety. The brain likes to know what's going to happen and how we need to respond. We increase our anxious response when it's an unfamiliar thing, when we don't know what's expected of us or how we need to respond. So because of that, because these changes are happening around us so rapidly, the brain is having to make contingency plans constantly, and that's very anxiety producing. And this is probably the most difficult thing for our brains to manage right now, there's no clear end in sight for a lot of these stressors. So again, eventually the snake goes away, right? One way or the other, either the bad or the good happens, but eventually we get away from the snake, or we get away and we identify, oh, it's actually an eastern rat snake and probably not at all, harmful or anything's going on, and we calm down. But right now, what our brain feels like is happening in the world is that we can't get away from the snakes. The snakes are, as far as our brain is concerned, there are snakes coming at us from every direction, and we can't get away from them. So the body and the brain just keeps building and building and building those stress hormones, and we're never actually getting to the point where we discharge that out of our body to be able to return to baseline. That's why so many people are experiencing a perceived increase in their anxious feelings, because there's so much more coming at us right now. So I just want to pause before we get into how do we deal with anxiety and see if there are any questions about the body's actual anxious response or what that's serving, or any other questions that have arisen so far.
So I'm not seeing any questions pop up yet, but if we do get any, do you want me to stop you?
Sure, that'd be great. Yep.
Okay.
Me whenever.
Thanks.
Okay, so let's talk about how do you manage the anxiety? How do you actually do that? Well, first of all, let's think about the basics. So the thing that all of these have in common is there are ways that we allow the body to discharge the stress hormones. So exercise is probably the absolute best way that we can do that. Why? Because it's our body's natural mechanism for discharging the stress hormones. It's the body's way of letting that out of our bodies. So you can do this in lots of different ways. People say, well, morning, afternoon, whatever, and everybody goes, exercise. Everyone knows to do that. We all know to do that. And it's true. And exercise has lots of benefits for other reasons, but when we're specifically talking about anxiety, the reason why exercise is so powerful is because it gives our body somewhere to put those stress hormones, a way to physically manage to purge them so that our bodies can come down. So in my personal life, I like to take a walk at the end of the day. I know that doesn't work for a lot of people, but for me, it's very powerful because I have all this stuff that I've been dealing with at work or that have built up over the course of the day, and walking allows me to let go of that stuff and process it, and allows my body to let those stress hormones come down and discharge so that I can complete that stress cycle. Exercise is really powerful in that regard, and it doesn't have to be vigorous exercise. It can be, but even just any kind of movement can really help you to manage that and get through it. Proper sleep. Now, of all the things that I have heard from folks over the last 6 months, one of the things that I have heard over and over and over again is how much everything that's been going on has disrupted sleep patterns for all of us. And this is so true. Just across the board, we're seeing lots and lots of people reporting lots of issues with sleeping. So there's a degree to which we can't control that, but we can do a lot of things to try to build that up, that capacity. No screens, like within an hour before bed, if possible. Dark room, cooling off the room, doing things to calm our bodies, because that sleep overnight is when our brains do the processing of everything that happened over the course of the day. So allowing our bodies to get that deep, proper sleep is really, really critical for our anxiety management as much as possible, because it's when the brain is going to process through things. And you can think about that if you've ever had a problem and you gave up on it for the course of the day. You're like, I just can't deal with it anymore. And then you wake up in the morning and either the problem doesn't feel as big, or you've somehow arrived at a solution or the start of a solution. It's because your brain was doing all the processing overnight while you were sleeping. So we want to really prioritize as much as possible setting ourselves up for proper sleep to try to manage that. Crying can be very, very good for discharging the stress response. The stress hormones. Why? Because it's very cathartic. It allows the emotions to come out. So if you've ever heard the expression an ugly cry, usually what people mean by that is that they really let it out. They really just sobbed and let those things out. And typically what happens is people will feel very exhausted after that, and they will feel better. And the reason is because they've let all those stress hormones out. Now, are there times when we can't necessarily cry appropriately? Maybe you had a stressful conversation with someone at work and you don't feel like you can, just dissolve into tears at that time. Sure, we're mammals, we have social relationships, so maybe that can't happen then. But if you're a person that's prone to crying and you feel like you have to constantly hold it back, I encourage you to find a place and a time to really let yourself give into that crying, because it's your brain trying to tell your body how to let it come out. Venting serves the same purpose, but with a caveat. You have to do the venting in the right way. If you go to somebody and you just vent and it becomes kind of complaining, that's probably going to increase the anxiety. But if you go to a trusted person, someone that you know will support you and love you, and you let out all the things you're holding in that are so stressful, that's going to complete that stress cycle. It's going to let that stress discharge of stress hormones happen. Same thing can happen with sensory experiences. So we can calm the body down by warm or cool baths or showers, whatever works for you, candles, any of those things that cooking for some people, the smell and everything like that can help a lot because those are calming the body down. So that's just some of the basics. And then we want to talk about, okay, so now we've calmed the body down, we've let the stress, we've figured out some ways to get the stress response cycle going correctly. We're letting that stress hormone out. So how do we then build resiliency? Meaning we allow ourselves to become more able to manage the stressors. In other words, we don't get so stressed out by the things as they come at us. Well, we can do a lot of different things. Meditation is very helpful for that, and there are really good apps out for that. If you are interested in it, prayer can work the same way for folks that fits within for you. Meditative exercises like yoga, tai chi, actually swimming can be really good in that regard too. Those things help you build your capacity to manage stressors over time. Practicing assertive boundaries. Now, why would this be building our resiliency? It's because we are mammals, and many of our stressors come from social relationships. So when we practice having assertive boundaries over things that aren't as big of issues, then we're able to have and when we say assertive boundaries, I'm not talking about like being mean. I'm talking about being aware of our limitations and willing and able to share those appropriately with others, and what we are and are not willing to do or to say or to participate in, so that we're really protecting ourselves. So we can practice that with people that we care about, setting assertive boundaries like, if someone asks you, if you're sitting down and they ask you to go get them a glass of water or something, you can practice very nicely saying, I'm sitting down right now. And hopefully the people that are around you will be people that will be able to hear that and take that. Practicing in those small ways builds your capacity and your window to be able to set appropriate boundaries in other areas of your life. That will help immensely in not getting as anxious if you're not feeling overwhelmed or feeling taken advantage of, things like that. Then we want to build the social support network as much as possible. Now, I get right now that's difficult because of the pandemic and social distancing and things like that. But as much as possible, surrounding yourself with people and groups that are helpful and that build you up and help you to feel like you are able to manage life a little bit better and help normalize the things you're going through, that's going to help a lot. And then there's a lot of research that shows that connecting with nature is very helpful. So going outside, fresh air, sunshine, water in particular, being around water, for some people being in, forests, around trees, that kind of thing. Those are very helpful things because they build our capacity. So I think it's helpful sometimes to think about ourselves in houseplant mode. When we notice that we're feeling maybe a little more stressed by life lately, or think we're not managing our stressors as well, go into houseplant mode. What does a houseplant need? It needs sunshine, it needs food, it needs water, it needs a safe place where the cat's not eating it. And those are all the things we need. So we can think about that. What do I need right now? Do I need to eat? Do I need to take a nap? Do I need to get better sleep tonight? Do I need to take a break? Do I need to walk outside? What do I need to do in this moment to build my capacity back up to manage that?
Morgan, we do have an anonymous question.
Okay.
So we have the question, I feel like during this time, all of my emotions feel different. I don't know how to explain it, but it just doesn't feel the same way. Does that make sense? It is just the intensity and the prolonged stressors that make feelings feel different.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And part of that is because of that stress response cycle. So as our stress has risen and our bodies keep holding all that stuff in, we perceive it lowers our what we call our emotional resiliency. So it makes things that previously wouldn't have been as stressful feel much more stressful. And because of that, we feel all of our emotions more intensely. So when I teach it to adolescents, I like to use a cliff example. So if you can imagine a little person standing on the edge of a cliff, if you are in a state of chronic stress and anxiety and you take the slightest little bump from something, we fall off the cliff, right? So when we are in the middle of this pandemic, we're standing right here on the cliff, and it doesn't take much for our emotions to knock us off the cliff because we don't have as much emotional resiliency left. Doing these kinds of activities is similar to like taking a step back from the edge of the cliff. We're still going to get buffeted by whatever it is that's hitting us, but we might be able to take the hit and not feel it as intensely. So it makes absolute perfect sense. If your emotions feel more intense right now and you feel like you are having to manage them a lot more and you're feeling them a lot more often, that's because your brain has done its good work of identifying that there's a lot of threatening things that are out of our control and unknown right now, and it's trying to help you prepare for that. So we're actually going to talk about some ways that you can manage that so that maybe those emotions don't feel so intense as we go on. And if I hope I answered the question. If not, please put any additional questions or any thoughts in the Q&A, but know that that is completely normal, and you are sharing that experience with, I would say, the vast majority of people, but for sure other people who are experiencing anxiety right now.
Morgan, we do have another great question. So how does substance use impact stress release hormones? Does it postpone the release?
It depends on the substance. So how does substance use impact the stress response cycle? So depending on the substance, some substances blunt our ability to perceive threats in the environment. And that happens because of some of the neurochemical responses that are happening in the brain. So our brains just don't perceive things as threatening. So specifically related to, well, it can be across the board, but especially things like social relationships that might produce anxiety. Some substances will blunt our ability to receive social cues from others, and so therefore we don't perceive things as threatening. Others of them affect our, other substances affect our pathways of feeling happiness and contentment. And so because of that, we may still feel the anxiety, but the substance is bringing that anxiety down. Unfortunately, what happens with most substance use is that it does work to do that initially, but over time, the body becomes tolerant of it, and it causes a lot of additional problems in terms of both the body and just life in general. Substance use can cause a lot of disruptions with lots and lots of different aspects of life. But neurochemically, what's happening generally is somewhere along the way, it's disrupting that stress response cycle. Unfortunately, however, over time, so that's what happens in the moment. It's disrupting the cycle so the person doesn't feel as stressed. But over time, it can actually serve to make us less able to manage things in our life. So over time, it actually can greatly increase the stress response and make stressful things more intense for us, which is why treating anxiety with substances is generally not helpful, because it is, and I'm talking about non-prescription substances, things that aren't prescribed to manage anxiety. It's generally not helpful because over time it will usually make the anxiety worse instead of better, even if it's helping in one particular moment when the person is using it. So it depends on which substance you're talking about in terms of how that actually happens. But that is why a lot of people start using substances to manage anxiety symptoms, because it does work effectively, oftentimes in the short run, but it unfortunately causes lots of problems in the long run for the person, not only in terms of their life, but also because it increases anxiety over time. So I hope that answered the question. If not, please write any follow-up questions, or if I was not clear, feel free to comment. So I want to talk now about how do you manage intense moments of anxiety. So there are a lot of different skills that are helpful for this. This particular set of skills is one that comes from something called dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT for short, and it's called a TIP skill, TIPP, the TIP skill. So TIP is used for instances where something has happened that has overwhelmed your coping skills and has created an intense spike in anxiety. So that could be anything from you walk out of the garage and there's a snake, or it could be, you know, you have a very intensely negative interpersonal interaction with someone, or you get really bad news. It actually can also happen because of positive stressors too. So positive stressors can also activate the stress response cycle. And sometimes even if what's happening is a good thing, it can also be very overwhelming to the person. So TIP skills are not designed to fix the problem or to deal with whatever's going on. It's just designed to help us get back into that window of where we're able to manage things when that stressor gets really, really overwhelming. So the T in the TIP skill stands for temperature modification. When we experience anxiety, it tends to produce heat in the body. So our face might get flushed and red sometimes, our hands might get clammy, we may feel hot. We may not be aware that we're feeling hot because of the intensity of the anxiety overwhelming us, but our body produces heat. So temperature modification involves cooling the body down somehow. So when I teach this to adolescents, my favorite way to teach, because adolescents often don't have very developed coping skills for managing anxiety that they're experiencing as their brain is still developing. One of my favorite things to do with them is to teach them that if they have permission from the adults around them to go when they're feeling that intense spike of anxiety and just open the freezer and stand with their face in front of the freezer for like 10 seconds, not forever. So they defrost the whole freezer, and don't shut the door to the freezer while your face is in it. But to stand there and let that blast of cool air calm them down. It's very, very effective. You can also do it by running cool water over the inside of your wrist. You can hold ice cubes. You can get into a cool bath or shower. You can drink cold water. But the idea is that you're cooling the body down rapidly, which it's kind of a reset button for the brain. So as the brain is experiencing intense anxiety and that heat spikes, we're going to try to go back down to that manageable level. The I in the TIP skill stands for intense exercise. So again, thinking about that stress response cycle, this is going to be if you're going along, so chronic anxiety raises and plateaus the stress level, but sometimes we have a rapid spike in the stress hormones. So if we have a rapid spike in the stress hormones, one of the ways that we can deal with that most effectively is doing some intense exercise to rapidly discharge the stress hormones. So jumping jacks work for that, running laps around the building. This is very effective for children. So if you have a child that you notice is having anxiety, having them do something physical to discharge that stress response is really, really effective because their bodies are meant to move all the time anyway. And it can be very helpful for them to do some jumping jacks, or if you have access to a trampoline, jumping on a trampoline works. Swimming works for this pretty well too, but that's not always something we can do in the spur of the moment. It works great for kids, but it's actually very effective for adults, and adults tend to not use this at all because, you know, we're sitting at our desk and we have to maintain our composure or whatever. But intense exercise, if you have a stressful thing happen, if you go and you walk rapidly, that's going to very quickly bring that stress level back down. It's very, very helpful. The first P in the TIP skill is paced breathing. So with the paced breathing, we're going to look at that, and there's a whole bunch of different kinds of paced breathing skills that can be done. My favorite one is square breathing. So you breathe in for 4 and then hold for 4, out for 4, and then hold for 4. So what that looks like is inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold your breath, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold your breath, 2, 3, 4. Now, why is that effective? It's because when we have an anxiety moment, our breathing tends to become very shallow and we breathe quickly, and that's our body's way of getting us away from the snake. But when we reset the breathing, that's a signal to the body, okay, we're okay, we're calming down. With children, you can do a starfish breath. You pretend your hand is a starfish and you pet the starfish. Inhale, out, exhale. Inhale, exhale. And you just have them run, pet the starfish as they breathe in and out until it calms their body down. Another one you can do is what's known as a 4-2-6 breath. So you inhale for 4, count of 4, hold your breath for 2, and then exhale for 6. And any of the paced breathing that focuses on the exhale is always going to be very calming to someone, because the exhale is, so we have 2 systems in our body. The sympathetic nervous system gets us ready to get away from a threat, and the parasympathetic nervous system works against that to calm us down when the threat is gone. So when we focus on the exhale, we're activating the parasympathetic nervous system. We're telling our brain and our body, it's okay, it's calm. If you're being chased by a bear, you're not going to be exhaling deeply. So if you're exhaling deeply, that tells the brain we're not being chased by the bear, and you're going to be able to calm the body down. The second P in the TIP skill is progressive relaxation. And that involves tensing and releasing muscles in the body in order. So we can practice that if you draw your attention down to your feet. Just notice what your feet feel like right now. You can wiggle your toes a little bit. And then you're going to clench your toes as hard as you can. 1, 2, 3, clench, hold, 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 and release. And you're going to allow the stress to go out through your toes and relax that part of your body. And then if you were to continue to do this, you would work your way up through your legs, your lower body, your abdomen, your shoulders, your hands, your face, your mouth, and you would kind of go through the duration of your body to tense and release muscles, which allows the stress hormones to relax. This one is very good to do if you're having trouble sleeping, or if you wake up feeling anxious in the middle of the night. You can do this progressive relaxation, and it will help your body to calm down. There are many great apps out there that will help with this. You can also get a lot of free scripts for like progressive relaxation on YouTube. So if you want to do it and just listen to someone guiding you through it instead of having to think about it, there's lots of ways out there that you can address that. And these skills are most helpful, again, for those times when the anxiety has spiked up and you need to get it down quickly.
Morgan, I have 2 questions.
Okay.
So the first question is, could you please explain what to do for panic attacks and how to help somebody?
Yes, panic attacks. So panic attacks are awful and miserable, and they typically won't hurt you. So, but we have to be very cautious, because the symptoms of a panic attack can mimic that of a heart attack. And so we never want to just assume that that is what's going on unless someone knows that they're having a panic attack. So I want to put that caveat out there to begin with, is that we want to be, we always want to be cautious of the fact that they could be having a medical emergency and that the symptoms are very similar. Assuming that it is a panic attack, the person is going to feel as though they are dying oftentimes. They literally feel like the walls are closing in on them. They literally feel like they cannot breathe. There's somebody sitting on an elephant sitting on my chest. There's a really intense feeling of dread, as though the world is ending. And it's very, very miserable and uncomfortable for the person. So the things that help someone who, when a panic attack is happening, is to try to get into as open of a space as possible. Ideally, you go outside. Because the perception that things are closing in can be very frightening and very powerful for that person. So getting out to where there's fresh air, if it's safe, assuming that, it's a safe environment, getting out to where ideally if there's some sunshine, and then if we can, having that person breathe with you if they're willing to do that. Try to be very mindful of personal space. People will, their brains are in hyper threat mode at that moment. So they're going to be very aware of how close you are to them. And so, standing at a safe distance, and that's assuming that the person is not, running into traffic, if it's a child or something like that, as long as there's not a safety issue going on. We want to try to give them space as much as possible, and then invite them to breathe as much as you can, and breathing with them is helpful, because it's really generally not helpful to tell someone, just breathe, just breathe, just breathe. If I say that to you, breathe, 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 that's very anxiety producing. But if you draw attention to your own breathing, can we breathe? That can be calming. Using a calming tone of voice can be very helpful. And then there are things called grounding skills that are very helpful for panic attacks. I don't want to go into too many of them, but you can do things like looking around in your environment and naming everything that's red. So what do I see that's red right now? I see my paperclip holder. I see a poster on the wall. I see a notebook that's red. What do I see that's blue? I see a book. I see a cup, these kind of things. What you're doing is you're grounding that person back in their physical environment to help their brains kind of reset. There are tons and tons of different grounding skills, and you can look them up. Typically, people will know which ones work for them if they've practiced them in the past. Not all of them work for the same. You can try ones like counting backwards from 100 by sevens or something like that, that forces your brain to think, because sometimes that can break that cycle. But really the most important thing is to just let that person lead, because the panic attack will end. It may feel to that person like it's never going to end, and indeed sometimes they can be very intense and lasting, but it will end eventually. And so take your cue from them as much as you can safely, and let them lead. And then if it's a recurrent thing where the person experiences them ongoing, it can be helpful to have a sense of what you need to do to like have a conversation when it's not in the middle of a panic attack about how that person would like to be supported. Was there another question?
Yes, the second question is, what apps would you recommend for meditation?
So there's some great ones out there. I personally use the one 10% Happier, because I think it has really good teaching on how to do meditation. But there's also, I started meditating using Headspace. You can use Calm. There's also one called Insight Timer. Insight Timer is free and the others are paid apps. However, I am also aware, I think that several of them have specials going on right now because of the pandemic, where they are either free or deeply discounted. So those four are kind of some of the ones that I would recommend. Most of them offer free trials, so I recommend that you try and see which ones would be most helpful for you, because not everyone responds differently, not everyone responds the same way. You can also get meditation instruction from different meditation groups. There's a lot of groups that are offering online classes right now. I know that I believe it's the Florida Community of Mindfulness in Tampa is offering online meditation training, where you can go online and learn meditation. And that can be helpful sometimes to have somebody that's coaching you through it, if it's something that you want to develop as a regular practice. Meditation is, there's huge and ever-growing research showing the power of meditation in helping us manage anxiety. So those are some of the different ones. Okay, so let's talk about advanced anxiety management. One of the things that comes with anxiety a lot of times is a sense of needing to make contingency plans for all the different things that are going to happen. So that is anxiety. It's a gift to us. Again, it's our brain's way of helping us figure out, well, if this happened, I would do this. And if this happened, I would do this. And if this happened, I would do this. Unfortunately, that tends to be very unproductive use of energy, because almost never does life happen the way that we have thought of all the contingency plans. So that tends to raise anxiety. And one of the ways that we can kind of dial that back a little bit is to, instead of looking ahead at all the what ifs and making plans for that, to look backwards in our life at ways and places where we have already overcome unknowns. And what were the things that got us through that in that moment? How did we get through those unknowns? So if you think about 2018 you could never have predicted what 2020 you was going to have to go through, right? But somehow you have made it through 2020 up to this point, right? Now, who knows what could come for the rest of 2020, but somehow if you had gone back to 2018 and said, well, you need to have a plan for this and this and this and this, maybe yourself could have made that, but probably not. What happened was, as any of these unknowns arose, you adjusted, you made plans, you figured that out, you adapted. So your brain was able to do that adaptively in real time. And if you stop and think about it, there were certain qualities that got you through that. Maybe you are a person who is very good at relying on your social support network. Or maybe you're a person who's very resilient. Or maybe you're a person who's very adaptive. There are different qualities that get us through these different things, and we can stop and consider that. What is it that allowed us to get through that? And grounding ourselves and paying attention to that is usually more helpful, because almost certainly whatever it is that you're going to face is going to be different from the plan you made for it. But if you have built up your capacity to understand the ways that you adapt to stressful situations, then you're going to feel calmer when those stressful situations come, because logically it makes sense that you would be able to manage it, that you would get through it. Right? So looking backwards whenever we catch ourselves making all these plans for the future can be very helpful. The next one is channel restless energy. So anxiety tends to produce a lot of different kind of restless energy for us. It keeps us awake in the middle of the night. It allows us to feel jittery, you know. So we want to try to find a way to use that energy in a productive way, something that's actually going to help us. So we can take that jittery energy and we can channel it into some of those things that are actually helping build our resiliency. So again, practicing hard conversations with people you trust. If one of the reasons why anxiety is hard for you is because it's hard for you to set boundaries or to say no, or to stand up for yourself, or you stand up for yourself too harshly and then that causes breaches in the relationship, you can practice having conversations with people that you love and trust over small things, which build the resiliency to be able to have those harder conversations over more difficult things. And I advise people to make it silly, you know, so you can have a hard, difficult conversation over whether you're going to have tacos or pizza for dinner, and practice that skill of really talking through that. Laugh, it's fun, it can be silly. But your brain is building a blueprint for managing that. So you're channeling some of that jittery energy into building resiliency. You can also work on engaging in your positive self-talk. So because we are humans, our brains spend, research shows that we spend the vast majority of our time, if we're not intentionally thinking about something, our brains are thinking about ourselves, like making a narrative about ourselves. Oh, I forgot to send a birthday card to Aunt Judy. I need to get this done. I got to stop by the store later. Why did I put off sending that email? I should have just sent it last week. So our brains are doing that unconsciously all the time. So we can tap into that and try to make it more positive. So giving ourselves credit can help with that. Engaging in positive self-talk in other ways. So telling ourselves that we are capable of dealing with this situation, reminding ourselves of times when we've been successful in the past, or adaptive when there was a problem. Those things build that up. And then another way to channel that restless energy is to pick one area where you can control something. So you cannot control the pandemic, you cannot control the economy, you cannot control a lot of things right now in your life, but you can control the drawer that you have in your kitchen that's overflowing. So when I have a drawer in my kitchen that is overflowing right now, and over the course of the day, I get stressed and stressed and stressed. And then when I get home and I open that drawer and it sticks because there's too much stuff in it, it just infuriates me. Is the drawer really that big of a deal? No. But by that point, my body has absorbed so much stress that I am just about that. So when I have that restless energy, if I went and cleaned that drawer, that would help channel that and I would feel a lot better. So you can clean something, you can deal with some minor stressor that's bothering you in the back of your mind, setting screen boundaries. So you may not have full control over your sleep, for instance, but you can control what time you turn off screens at night, at least hopefully an hour before bedtime. Creativity is a huge antidote to anxiety. So let's think about why your brain evolved this in the first place. Let's imagine you're being chased by the bear out in the wilderness. If you're being chased by a bear out in the wilderness, your brain is not going to stop and go, you know what I should do? I should make a cave painting. I should try a new recipe for dinner tonight. Your brain is not capable of doing that in that moment because your brain is going, survive, 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 survive. I've got to get away. So if we cultivate the practice of creativity in our life, we are telling our brains that we are not being chased by the bear. We're helping ourselves to have the ability to remain calm and to get through things as much as possible. Now, creativity, I am not a painter. You do not need to paint in order to be creative. You can do lots of different things. You can cook. You can try new recipes. One of the things that we've been encouraging families to do that I think is really awesome is to do backyard murals with things they find in their yard, or you can do it in the park, where the whole family finds rocks and sticks and leaves and whatever, and you make some kind of picture of something and take a selfie with it if you want to, and the whole family participates, and it's really fun. Is it going to blow away? Yes, absolutely it will. But you know what? You can make a new one tomorrow. And it becomes a really amazing bonding time for the family, but it also is building that creativity, and it's allowing us a time to tap into parts of your brain that shut down when you're feeling very anxious, to help your body and brain to be calmer. It's a wonderful weekend activity to do with kids. Even teenagers sometimes will get involved with it, and you can do a lot of fun. Just know it may feel very unnatural at first. You may be like, I'm so anxious right now, and that lady told me to paint a picture, and I'm going to paint a picture, and it's not helping. Maybe painting is not your thing, you know? So find an outlet that is creative for you, that does allow you to tap into that, and then keep at it and build it into your life. Yes, it takes time, but it's going to be worth it in the long run. Intentional courage can be very helpful. So this is a great skill for adolescents and young adults. Their brains are at the point of needing to develop a sense of autonomy and self-efficacy, meaning their ability to manage their lives effectively. So pushing children and adolescents to do things that are a little outside their comfort zone, but not so far that they're going to fail, is really, really helpful as an anxiety management tool for them, because they are building the sense that they can handle things. So if you think about kids, if our lives feel like they're out of control right now, imagine what kids are going through. Their lives, they have no control over anything in their life right now. So if they are, or ever, so if you help them build a sense of ability to do things with a little more mastery, they're going to build that sense that they have some control over their life, and that's going to help lower that anxiety. So learning a new sport, pushing yourself to do something that you might have been afraid of a couple of years ago, as long as it's a safe thing. For young adults and for older teenagers or even younger teenagers, learning new skills like cooking meals. Maybe for teenagers, they can be pushed to, like, maybe they need to schedule an appointment with their pediatrician. You can have them but have them be the ones to schedule it, but you be, with them, so that they're starting to build that sense of mastery. It's pushing them into that outside their comfort zone, but helping them build that up. As an adult, this is also an excellent thing to do. We adults tend to be very bad at it because we like to stay in our bubbles, but learning a new skill can be very helpful, and don't pick something that's impossible. And then this is one of my favorite skills, worrying intentionally. And I know we're running out of time, so I want to be faithful to our time. So you might be thinking, but Morgan, I don't want to worry more. I want to worry less. Yes, I understand that. And I agree with you about that. But this will help you worry less. So we want to worry with intentionality. So worries tend to be, we rehearse the same thing over and over in our head. It's not, by the 27th time that we've gone over it, it's not very helpful. So we can worry intentionally by making a list of the things we're worried about. And then whenever something else, we notice ourselves worrying, we add it to the list. And then we set aside time to actually intentionally worry. So we pick one of the things off of that list, and then we try to help ourselves process that worry more fully. What am I actually afraid of? What is the worst thing that could happen? What is the most likely thing that could happen? How likely is it that the worst thing will happen? What would somebody I love say to me about this? What would I say to somebody I love if they were having this issue? How have I managed this? What's one thing I can control about this issue? And then as those emotions arise, really letting yourself sit with those feelings, because usually under anxiety, there's other feelings that come up too. It might be sadness. It might be concern. So it might be anger. There's usually other stuff going on. So we can let that stuff arise, and that's going to help our brains to get out of that loop of just going over and over it and actually arrive at some forward step. And then we want to try to identify at least one step that we can take, even if it's a tiny one. So if we're worried about grandma getting the virus and being sick, we can maybe send a card to grandma or something like that to do something. Is it going to prevent it? No, but we're going to move forward and try to address it anyway. We are actually going to provide you a handout on how to do this skill specifically because it is so powerful and effective. So when you get the recording, you're also going to get a handout telling you how to do this more effectively and a list of potential questions you can use to help process those worries. Carly, and Jessica, are we good to finish out the last few slides?
Looks like we're all caught up on questions, so I think we're good.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. If anyone needs to leave, Morgan, we will send out the recording, but I know you're about to wrap up shortly here anyways.
Okay, so let's do the last few slides. This is another fun advanced anxiety skill called thanking the anxiety. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but it can be a lot of fun and it gets us out of that loop of constant things. So I advise you to name your anxiety something. So let's say like my anxiety is named Perfect Paula. Now, if we have anyone who's named Paula, it's a lovely name, and I've known many wonderful people named Paula, so it's nothing against the name, but my brain likes alliteration. So Perfect Paula likes to tell me all the ways that I'm failing in my life all the time. And so what I imagine doing is when I catch myself having those worries, I thank the anxiety, and I imagine like a big presentation and somebody standing up as the moderator and going, "Thank you, Paula, for that amazing, long, incredibly detailed PowerPoint about all the ways that we are going to mess up at work, get fired, and be abandoned by everyone we love in life. We appreciate it." And then I imagine the rest of my brain going, "Thank you, Paula." And it's really a fun way to break out of that cycle, because I promise you, if you do that, it's really difficult to go back to whatever the anxiety was that you were having a few minutes ago. Because really, at the end of the day, what is the anxiety trying to do? It's trying to keep you safe. It's trying to help you identify a place where maybe you need to do something, or you need to address something, or at least a place where maybe you need to work on some connection with someone or something like that. So we thank the anxiety and we appreciate the role that it's playing, and we try to help move forward in our lives. And again, my apologies to anyone named Paula. It's a lovely name. So you said we didn't have any questions. I want to just kind of go through, if there's not, I'm just going to stop me if there is, but I'm going to keep going. So when do we want to seek help? When is anxiety past that point where it's just impacting our quality of life and it's starting to become something that we need to address? So if the anxiety is becoming life altering, meaning you are really noticing that it's impacting your ability to live your life the way you want to, that's a time when we want to go ahead and seek help, because it is treatable. You can get much better and feel better and not have to live with the way it's altering your life. If severe depression symptoms begin to arise, so that would be like, I can't get out of bed, I'm feeling hopeless, I'm feeling helpless, I feel like my life is in a tailspin, I feel like a failure all the time, any of those kinds of symptoms, that's a sign that there's some things going on that probably really need to be addressed, and there are ways to help that get better. If the anxiety is interfering with your ability to do the things you need to do, so if you're a parent and it's impacting your ability to care for your kids, or you're not able to get out the door to go to work, or you can't leave your house anymore, those are signs that anxiety has really gotten really severe, and it might be time to address that. And obviously, if you're ever experiencing any thoughts or feelings of suicide, wanting to harm yourself or kill yourself, obviously please do reach out for help. But even if none of those things are present, I also encourage you to seek help if you just really want to feel better and you're noticing that your quality of life has declined. Maybe you're not to that crisis point yet, but it's just really impacting you and you don't feel good. It's a time to reach out as well, because there's a lot of ways for us to help you feel better and for things to get better in your life. So how can you reach out for help? As Jessica mentioned, we do offer a 24-hour free emotional support and crisis line. The number is 863-519-3744. You can call that at any point. It's free, and you will talk to someone who can help you through whatever it is that you are experiencing in that moment. Or if you can call on behalf of someone else if you're trying to support someone and you're not sure how. We do have outpatient therapy. They're doing telehealth appointments right now. And we do have a lot of resources that are available on our website. We are going to post the handout, and you will also be getting that handout, the Worrying Intentionally handout. We also have an anxiety and coping workbook that's available on our website, which is really awesome. So I want to thank you all for being here. I am sorry that we went 5 minutes over. My apologies about that. My contact information is right there, my email and phone numbers. If you have any questions or you would like any follow-up, please do reach out to me. I appreciate you sticking with us today, and I wish you the best as you joined with me in managing our anxiety.
Thank you so much, Morgan. We appreciate you taking the time to share all of this great information. Again, we will be sending out a recording. We'll actually go